And unfortunately, it became clear that there were body parts present. So it was apparent that there was at least one victim that was definitely deceased.
Just a quick disclaimer, the content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, crime scenes and other disturbing material. Listener discretion is advised.
This episode is sponsored by Think Forensic.
Think Forensic are a one-stop shop for all things forensic science and crime solving. They hold experience days, as well as corporate events, team building events, and general education for primary school right the way up to university level, as well as other events and consultancy. There's also a shop where you can get your hands on all things crime solving, from evidence gathering to packaging and collecting evidence, as well as other forensic science equipment.
For more information or to book on an experience day, please visit the website.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Grave Secrets. We're your hosts. I'm Beth.
And I'm Annie, and today we've got another case today. When I'm doing the editing, I always laugh because we say that line every single time, and I think, we're always doing a case today. Why do we tell people like that we're doing a case today?
I did have an idea for another thing we could do.
Oh, okay.
And I've forgotten what it was.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us something interesting.
No, I could have done, but I've forgotten what it was. It was another concept. It wasn't missing persons.
Unsolved? Because you know what?
No.
Our unsolved cases go down really well.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
we've
they
said
do.
before, like, we don't do many unsolved cases because a lot of the time we ourselves skip the unsolved ones because we like to have
Yes.
an ending. We like to have a conclusion, don't
Yes.
we? But it's some of our best performing episodes are the unsolved ones.
I do think as well now, well, my life at least is slightly less chaotic. Mind you, I think yours has slowed down a bit. We could do another Eyes and Ears because I have binge watched all of the... Now, please don't come for me in the comments when I get this wrong. I always want to say sleep, pray, obey, but it's not that. The documentary is about the Mormon church. There was the ones back in 2016, and then they've just released the new ones.
And you've watched all those?
But I always mix it with Eat, Sleep, Rave, Repeat, the song.
Yeah. Because it's just three words.
Keep, sweet, pray, and obey.
Right.
That was what the first season was called.
Right.
And now they've done a new one.
Okay.
So I've binge watched all those. I'd like to talk about them.
So we'll do an Eyes and Ears then, so we can talk about that.
And also, everyone is currently talking about The Crash. I don't know
Not watched it yet. Not
No.
watched it yet. There's 2 documentaries on it. So there's one on Netflix and there's one on Hulu.
Okay.
And apparently they are both very different perspectives and different angles. So that might be interesting to watch the both of them.
Yes.
And you might notice we are somewhere new today.
Yes, for those of you that watch our pretty little faces, you may notice that things have changed. We now have a new location for filming. Now, don't get us wrong. We're still working on it. This is very new for us both. But this is going to be our new home.
So we're going to get some bits together, aren't we? I mean, it's just took us half an hour just putting... Do we need a planting? Do we not? Do we need it plain?
Yeah.
Do we need the plain background?
And
do we need some blue?
I will confess, for anyone that is listening, I do recommend you come back and watch this bit because it's funny. I thought, no worries, I'll just make a poster that we can have up behind us. Anyway, obviously didn't calculate sizes, and I have made this wonderful poster here, but when you put that behind us,
it's so small.
it's so tiny. It doesn't look like a poster, nor does it look like a piece of art. It's not working for us.
So the right concept, but we just need a little
We
bit
just need
bigger.
something else. I'm thinking neon.
Some lights or
Neon
something
brave,
behind.
Neon 5 stars. Neon
We need.
something.
I'm trying to look at it
We
in the
need
camera
something
now.
else.
Like
It's not working for us. Anyway, so we were kind of technically prepared, but it's just not quite working out. So any suggestions, please let us know.
Yep.
I'm thinking blue accents, which obviously Annie's thrilled about.
Yes, love a bit of blue. I love the neutral in here, but in our old studio, I did actually quite like the blue because
worked really well.
It just fitted in with everything, didn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we are working on it. So if you do
Yeah.
watch us, it will come together over the coming months, won't it?
But it's very exciting. I feel like this is every time we keep moving forwards.
You know what I'm going to be doing? If we get blue cushions and blue accessories, every time we finish the podcast, they're going to get put in a bag and put in the attic and never brought out again until the next episode. Because
You can have them as garden cushions.
I wouldn't even have blue garden cushions. Have you seen my garden furniture? Even that's all neutral. Yeah, they'll go in a bag in the spare room and they will be brought out on podcast days.
From under my spare bed every week.
And when you have a new house, you can go. You can have them.
Then you can have as many blue as you like.
You can have them in your house.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get on to our case for today. So this is a little bit of a different one. It is in California. So we are going to America again. And it's different in the way that this is actually an explosion at a beauty spa. This explosion kills one person and injures some of the customers as well. The police and forensics work around the clock to uncover the truth behind the tragedy that has injured and damaged so many people's lives. And when we have cases like this where there is surviving victims, I always think, if you have been injured in something like that and you've been there and you've seen it, like how traumatic is that afterwards? So it's not just the straight after when you're recovering from it. It's way down the line as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I do think it's difficult because obviously we're always kind of victim focused, which I know we do bang on about, but it is so important. But then I do sometimes think when it's things like this, I wonder whether the surviving victims ever comes across the coverage of it, because it must be really difficult for them.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they ever watch or listen to anything.
You wouldn't think, I was involved in this, let's watch it, would you? Do you know?
But it must be a strange concept to have lived through something. It'd never leave you. You'd obviously always be thinking about it. But then on top of that, seeing things about it as well. So it is difficult because obviously we kind of want to talk about it to remember the victim, but then at the same time you have got to remember that people's lives continue to be affected by these things.
Yeah, and in this case, with it being a bomb as well, the police would not know if it's going to be something maybe terrorist related. Is it something personal? When this first happens, you just wouldn't know, would you?
No, wouldn't know either way. And I think what makes it kind of complicated again is in America, again, we don't like giving the kind of nicknames for offenders, but you always think of the Unabomber.
Yeah.
And that was half and half, really, wasn't it? Targeted specifically, but then also just wanted to cause
as much damage as
possible.
Yeah.
So it is tricky to know where to start. But we're going to be talking about the 15th of May 2018. And very quickly, when the reports of explosion came into 911, the FBI were called out. Obviously, this is a large-scale investigation from the minute that multiple calls are coming in.
I was just going to say there were so many calls that came in to the police straight after the explosion happened.
Yeah.
And I did listen to some of the calls, and it sounded absolutely horrific, even for those that were just, I would say bystanders, but who were just watching from the outside.
Yeah. I do think as well, it seemed like some people were unclear about what had actually happened at the beginning, because you probably wouldn't have realised from the footage, you probably wouldn't have realised whether or not it was a fire or just a one-off explosion. Obviously, some people would have heard the initial.
I thought the scene as well itself was very hectic.
Yes. So
there was a lot going on, wasn't there?
If we try and describe it, I'm not sure whether we can put a couple of photos of it in there.
Yeah.
But if we try and describe it, it was off what looked like quite a main road and a built-up area. And I don't mean that in terms of lots and lots of shops, but I mean quite either high-rise buildings or buildings in close proximity. And the building that had actually had the explosion was almost like a business park, wasn't it?
Yeah. And the damage from the footage as well. I was so shocked about how much damage
Yes.
something could do.
It looked a bit like, you know, when there's a hurricane or something similar, like a natural disaster, and it kind of peels the outside of the building off and leaves like the internal shell.
The walls were like fully off, weren't they? The side of the walls had come off.
The walls had come off, but you could still see some of the insulation or a couple of the panels from the structure of the building. But then because it was like part of a larger building, the whole left-hand side was still intact as a different kind of business or businesses. But imagine you're just in a different part of that same building.
Yeah.
Because it was really just the right-hand side. So there's the building that's had the explosion go off. Then there's a car park, and then to the right of the car park, there's also another building. And then across the road, it was basically the same again. But the debris was way into the road. There was roofing that was in the road. And just structural really that remained.
Yeah, the ceiling had like fully caved in, hadn't it? At the top, there was sort of the wires, the electrics exposed.
Very quickly as well, when you were listening to the 911 calls, you were also hearing the calls that were coming in from officers on the scene back to kind of dispatch in the control room. And unfortunately, it became clear that there were body parts present. So it was apparent that there was at least one victim that was definitely deceased. But there were 2 victims outside of the salon that were being treated, again, by people that were quite quick to, you know, see if anyone needed help.
Yeah.
That responders then got to, and thankfully then blue lighted, didn't they, back to the hospital.
Yeah. Like we said before, at this point, it's unsure whether it would be a targeted attack. But you've also got to think about when there's a device such as a bomb, things can trigger a secondary device as well. So you don't want to, even though you want to get the people out safely, you can't just rush straight into that area, because you need to know that there's not a secondary device in there that is going to blow up and injure you and all your team as well.
Yeah, so they'd mobilised a whole FBI team, but then it's also really chaotic in the sense of people do rush out to help.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of people from the local area or close proximity that have gone to help the victims.
Yeah.
But then they're effectively then contaminating either a crime scene or are in danger of, as you say, kind of a secondary explosion.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised how casually people seemed to be kind of milling around the area, because although you'd think, okay, that was an explosion and now the damage has been done, you still don't know what could happen.
I think it doesn't cross people's mind that there would be a bomb that's gone off in a little shop area or something. Yeah. So they think, oh, I wonder what's happened here.
Because people were just crossing the road going up to it, weren't they?
As someone just crashed into the side of the building, the walls come off, or do you know what I mean? And you know how much people love to have a look at stuff as well. People always stop to have a look. But specialist officers were brought in to evacuate the area around the scene, because public safety at this point is paramount.
So officers were asking people to back away, and there were a lot of other local businesses, as we've mentioned, one of which was actually a daycare centre directly across the road, and that also had to be evacuated. They managed to speak to the victims back at hospital. They actually briefly spoke to one of them at the scene. And they said that they remembered seeing someone opening a box, and then that was it. That's all they could remember. They'd asked for more details, but then obviously they were rushed to hospital. So you've not got an awful lot of information, but even just based on the mention of a box, you then do have reason to believe that it was a bomb.
Yeah.
The deceased victim in this case was quite quickly identified, because, as I say, there were 2 surviving victims.
Yeah.
The beauty salon was called Magia Cosmetica, and it was owned by a woman called Ildiko Krajnyak. Ildiko had built the business over many years and had initially trained actually as a beautician in Hungary, which was over 30 years prior. So you imagine you've built up a business from scratch.
Yeah, all your customers and everything. You've opened your own business. You've got to where you want to be. She probably knew all the clients.
Yeah, and I think if you've got a business, that would feel just as much of a safe space than your own home.
Yeah.
Because
it's like your second home, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, she was quite quickly identified. Ildiko was known as a kind, giving and lively woman. Obviously, to own a beauty salon, you're going to be coming into contact with your customers all the time.
Everyone said so many nice things about her, didn't they? They said, described her as being a wonderful human being. Mm-hmm. Everyone just really liked her. And even her friends said she was such sort of a good friend. She was always there for you. She was always checking in.
Yeah.
It just shows, doesn't it, what sort of a person she was.
She was close with her parents. She also had a brother who she was incredibly close with, in regular contact. She had been married, but the marriage sadly didn't work out, although the pair remained close as they shared a son together. Their son was actually studying at Washington Uni at the time that the explosion happened. And again, you can't imagine your own parents kind of dying when you're at such a young age, but to then find out that it's under that kind of circumstance, must just be horrific.
Absolutely
for
heartbreaking.
Anyone. And also heartbreaking for the customers that were there.
Yeah.
To have kind of, well, they did see it happen, didn't they?
Yeah. So at this point, it was Special Agent Ashley Mericle from the FBI who travelled to the hospital. She spoke to the witnesses, and they had actually visited the beauty spa to get facials after they'd just come back from a trip.
Yeah.
So they probably thought, I've just been away on holiday. Why not book in and get a facial,
And it's like catching up with your mates as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you go regularly, they know just as much about your life.
You become
as
friends,
else.
don't you? We know that when you go and have a treatment done, they do end up sort of becoming your friends. One of the women had said they were ready to check out and they were maybe about 4 feet away. Ildiko had walked over behind her desk to where there was a box on the corner of the desk, and they described it as being about waist level. As Ildiko opened the box, this is when the explosion happened. But as all the women could describe really was sort of like a bright white light, and how it was obviously very traumatic for them. And at this point, the officers thought, well, it was the parcel, which was the bomb. Yeah.
So a couple of things are significant even in just that one brief witness statement. One of which they'd actually also mentioned that Ildiko had also been away. She'd just returned to work after a trip overseas. She'd been away for a few weeks. And so that then led investigators to question whether or not Ildiko was in fact the target, or whether or not this was just a random attack.
Yeah.
If she'd been away, she's either got a lot of different parcels that haven't been opened, but then you think, well, how long could a bomb be sat there before it goes off?
Yeah, because obviously the postman will have had to
handle it.
It looks like he's had to handle it, deliver it, and then how do you know it's going to go off when she specifically opens it?
But the other thing that then becomes significant, and this is much more for the bomb disposal experts and the bomb scene examiners, that this bright white light and the fact that it was white smoke that was leaving the device and at the scene does actually tell them quite a lot of information about what the device might have been created with.
Yeah, so the different chemicals in explosions react in different ways, don't they? So if you've got an explosions expert and a chemist, then they will be able to say this is made with such and such from the reaction that it's had.
So even from someone that's given quite a brief statement in a really traumatic situation, there's quite a lot of information to go at there, which is obviously a real positive for the investigation.
Yeah.
Once they'd secured the scene and evacuated everyone, obviously CSIs then need to go in and process the beauty salon, and remnants of the device can sometimes remain under the debris at the scene, which is integral to working out what a device might have been and who might have created it, or who might be responsible.
But you just think at this scene, how far out will the debris have gone? Because it's been obviously a large explosion.
Yeah.
And you could see from the footage in the videos that there was debris in the car park.
I think as well, it was just the fact that Ildiko was in such close proximity to it. It could have very easily have been more victims.
Yeah.
If the salon was busier.
Yeah. People sat in the waiting room or something, waiting to go into a treatment.
And I would also imagine, depending on what treatments people were having.
Yeah.
That could have an effect as well.
Yeah.
It was horrendous. But as you say, that's a big scene to try and get through. We often talk about search area and cordons in much cases, which are often much wider than people think. But with bomb scenes, it's kind of much more apparent. I saw an interview with one of the forensic examiners, and they said that they kind of work back from the furthest point that they can see debris.
Yeah.
And then spread it even further out than that.
Yeah, by up to another 40 metres out. So you think 40 metres, that's quite a long way. So just
because you might have 40 metres that the debris is spread, and then you have to go another 40 metres on top of that.
Yeah.
They are looking for anything that could suggest what has come from the device, and making sure that they don't miss anything. But obviously it's tricky really to distinguish what's come from the building.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to wiring and things like that.
Yeah, what's come from the actual building and what's come from a device. So at the same time as the CSIs are combing through this crime scene, the police are now looking for Ildiko's phone, her computer, anything within her background that can help with the investigation. Who are her friends? Who are her customers? Who's a partner? Who's her ex-partners? Is there any disagreements with people? They're trying to find any sort of motive, really. Anyone who's got a motive to do this, because you've got to remember as well, this is a very public thing to do. It's not something what's just behind closed doors, and it is a public display, isn't it?
Yeah, and from what everyone was saying, kind of from the off, there would have been no motive because Ildiko was such a loved member of the community.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't clear. Because it was such a statement that had been made by the bomb going off, very quickly it hit the press. So within hours, they had set up a tip line and decided to do a press release or a press conference asking for any information. And a caller actually rang to say that he had seen ABC News, he'd seen a story about the explosion, and that he was actually a co-owner at the salon. He named Ildiko, so they knew that it was kind of a
legit, yeah. And if he's co-owner, I'm guessing names would have been on paperwork and stuff as well, if you co-own something.
So it was a male that had rung, and this male was identified as a 59-year-old man. He was an aspiring actor also, and he was called Stephen Beale. So Beale was instantly thought of as a potential target.
Yeah, because if they targeted Ildiko, he could have been a separate target.
And it's like at work, we get post that's just either for Think Forensic or for management of the company.
Yeah.
Anyone can open it. So you think, well, he might have been the intended target.
Yeah.
So very quickly, a team then went out to his home address, which was 30 miles away from the scene, as they were concerned that he could be a secondary target. Beale had actually also received some packages that same day, and they obviously needed to be cleared as safe.
So some of the packages were inside already, and some of the packages were still outside the house. So obviously the police are going to ask him to come away from his house, and they want to then check the packages, check they know where they've come from.
He wasn't actually in his home at the time, was he?
No.
But he did give them permission to check these devices. So they said, check the ones outside, and then you can actually go into my home.
He told them where they were, didn't he? He said they're on the side in the house. Feel free to go in and have a look.
They declared them as safe, and then they did ask if they could search the rest of the property just to check for anything else that might be hazardous. When he was then questioned, obviously just in general about his relationship with Ildiko, he said, Ildiko and I were close, and not only that, but I know more about her than 95% of the people that you could ask. He said that's because they were previously married. And it did then become clear from analysis of text messages and things from Ildiko's phone that there was a relationship between Beale and Ildiko. She'd sent a friend a text saying, I love this guy, he's my dream come true, I'm so worried what will happen next. And any girl's worst nightmare is actually what then happened to Ildiko, because it actually then sent to him rather than her friend. But he responded saying, I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And it's,
I imagine the anxiety when you send that message to the wrong person.
I know, I can't think of anything worse.
No.
But they had a relationship. The couple were known for being kind of attached at the hip. They'd travelled the world together. They'd then co-signed this lease on... So it was Ildiko's business, existing business that she'd kind of built up. But then they took a lease out on this salon in their names within a year of knowing each other.
So I think this all went quite quick because they met online in 2016.
Yeah.
We're only in 2018. Mm-hmm. He said they've been married, they've been in a relationship, and they've signed a business together all within 2 years, which does sound, and they've been on loads of holidays together.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say.
It was an intense relationship.
Yeah, usually you do maybe the travelling bit first, don't you, for a year?
See if you can, see if you get on with them, and then move into that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it seems like quite a whirlwind.
Romance.
Romance,
But then again, I think when people are older... then a lot of
think
time,
it moves quicker.
Yes, because they think, well, no messing around. You probably talk about all the big stuff a lot.
I'm not
quicker
wasting
than
time.
People do when they're younger.
Yeah.
That's
my thing. I'm just like, don't waste my time anymore. Like, I do not want my time wasted. So, and I think
Cut to the chase.
Ildiko was older, wasn't she? Well, when I say older, when I say older, I mean older than me.
Yeah, yeah. So Beale stated that he also had no idea who would target her or the business and them. He did raise a bit of suspicion, though, actually, in one of his answers, because he was kind of speaking as if he had knowledge of how investigations work. He said, your whole deal is means, motive and opportunity, and I don't know anyone with motive. The other thing that police became wary of is that it was revealed, as Annie said, when they look at the paperwork, that the pair had never actually been married.
In a way, when they said this, I thought, is he saying it because, they were that in love with each other, they were going to get married, that's what they called each other?
It was as if they were married.
It was as if they were married because that's what the end goal was and that's what they called each other, he's my husband, she's my wife sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then... you'd keep that between you two, but there's no need to say that to the police because that's just a bit
misleading.
of a lie, isn't it?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, I know people call now it makes me cringe, but when people refer to them as wifey, but they're not married yet, that's like a colloquialism. That's what you do with friends. When it's with the police, even if it had said, "Oh yeah, we were married," you'd have thought that because this is an investigation, he'd have followed it up with, oh, well, actually, not legally speaking, but you know what I mean, kind of thing.
But he didn't, did I?
No.
A bit strange for him to come out with. And I think once the police knew that he'd misled them in that way, it sort of led them to dig a little bit deeper into the relationship, just to see if it was as he was making it out, because he was making it out to be this perfect relationship,
this
wasn't
was the
he?
other thing, because when they were speaking to him, and he was quite open to communicating with them.
Yeah.
Now, we did mention that he was an aspiring actor, and I did feel, you can listen to some of the clips.
It was very theatrical, wasn't it?
It was very over the top, and it was almost positive to the point of trying to make a point, if that makes sense. So when recalling how the pair had met, he said, we went on our first date June 19th, 2016. He said how they'd met through Tinder. He said we were dating, we were business partners.
How do you even remember the first date? Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
just the fact that he had. I mean, I know some people love dates more than others. I am awful.
I
at
don't even know a
dates.
month.
I couldn't tell you what month we met.
No, neither could
I've got no idea.
I can tell you the month, but I wouldn't know the date.
Yeah. But it was very precise, almost as if it was to hand. He also said, I cannot come up with a single thought. These are quotes. I cannot come up with a single thought as to who would want to hurt her. She cared and went out of her way to do things for people. When we'd go travelling, she sent texts to clients and friends saying, what kind of thing do you want me to bring back? Keychains? She was a very giving person. And again, it's just such a niche example. You'd just think your mind would be elsewhere. If you've just found out that someone that you love and you've been attached at the hip with for 2 years has been the victim of
An attack like that, a bomb.
Yeah, you just wouldn't think you'd be thinking about bringing keychains back off holiday.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It just seems odd. But you never know how people respond in those situations. Yeah. So back to the kind of scene and the bomb itself. They were trying to identify what the package was and how it came to arrive at the salon. So they'd spoken to UPS delivery drivers, any other delivery drivers. They'd also looked at CCTV at the business suite, but they weren't actually working. The nursery across the road had CCTV, so they did have a look at that, but it didn't directly look onto the beauty salon. So
it was
all
sort
it
of just
had
at the
was,
side, wasn't it? It was more like the road outside.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's probably the closest that they've got on CCTV to the salon, isn't it? So digital forensics would obviously start then working the way through that CCTV.
Yes, and you do also think nobody's going to be carrying quite a large box down the road if it contains a bomb. You are going to use a vehicle, aren't you?
Yeah.
So if it's got the road on the footage,
They might see someone pulling up and unloading or something. And at the same time, the CSIs are still at the crime scene, combing through this area bit by bit.
Yeah,
they are working meticulously, aren't they, to find anything that could be related to the bomb. So they're looking for any wires, any remnants of chemicals, anything sort of battery powered. And it must have been so difficult for them going through that site because you don't know what's of relevance and what isn't.
I'd have liked to have known as well because they grid out areas, so they'll have areas 1, 2, whatever. I'd have liked to know how many different areas. Getting really pedantic.
And I saw as well on some footage that the CSIs had got just like round boxes, and they were just putting everything into the boxes and then I'm guessing
it away for further analysis.
Going through it all where they can maybe empty it out and spread it all out and go through it properly.
Yeah.
But there must have been a lot of those boxes that were taken to be analysed.
The other thing that I think is very clever that people probably wouldn't think of necessarily, they were taking a lot of soil samples.
Yeah.
Now you might think, why in this case would you need soil samples? Because it's not like other cases we talk about where you're looking for length of time that a body's maybe been in the ground.
Yeah.
What they were looking at in this case was for any chemicals that have then mixed with the natural environment.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very clever. Obviously, this is all a slow process, though, and when everything is getting back to the lab and being processed, that's taking anywhere up to, and if not more than, 36 hours. While that search is ongoing, because Beale is now potentially a target or a suspect, either way, his home needed to be searched. So they asked Beale if they could do a full house search, and quite quickly they were then looking for a warrant to get more information. And that's because when they got to his garage, and again at this stage they were kind of primarily just looking for any hazards to Beale, they noticed chemical containers full of fuels, oxidizers, all of which are commonly used for bomb making.
It's strange though, because I thought, why would it be... He was so
Just
sort
so
of nonchalant
open
about it, and they were just left there in the open, in the garage. So I did think at this point, is there a reason behind this? Because surely, if someone, if he'd done this, why has he just left everything out?
Yeah. To me, it's either like, because when I'm talking about these kind of boxes and chemical containers, we're talking like, either grit bin size or, like chicken feed containers, that kind of size. When you get the huge bird feed bowls and it comes in like big
There was a lot as well, wasn't there?
Size.
I saw some of the photos from the crime scene, and it was actually one of the most senior bomb investigators that said it's the most explosive chemicals he's ever seen in a house.
Yeah. And quite a vast array of different kind of chemicals as well, not just a couple. But Beale, within 24 hours of the explosion, had gone down to the police station voluntarily to talk about everything and said, oh, don't worry, I can explain that, no problem, and said that he was actually into rocketry, which is the hobby of making rockets, fully functional. And again, he'd got photos of rockets that he'd made previously. Neighbours said, yeah, he used to kind of construct them in his garage, in his garden. And in order for the rocket to launch, obviously you need to use those chemicals.
But even this, it shows that he's got experience in working with these chemicals, and it's a bomb that's gone off.
Yeah.
So even though, yes, it is his hobby, it shows that he also knows how to use these.
Yeah, but when investigators actually said that to him, he said, well, I'd have no idea how to construct something on such a scale. He said, I saw all the devastation on the TV. But then again, he was really specific because he said, to me, that looked like a C4 explosion.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if he's into his rockets and stuff and explosives, then he might know a bit more about that than the average person. But to say that to the police, I was watching his interview thinking,
No. And obviously I like a lot of language. And the next thing that caught the attention of officers is the fact that Beale then said, unless the package she was opening was very large, I don't know what could have done that kind of damage. Officers then said, hang on a moment, how do you know she was opening a package? How do you know it was on a package? And Beale said, well, it was on the news, it said so. Now, we obviously were not watching the news coverage at the time, so I can't say yes or no. It had been stated. They'd likely said it was an explosion,
but not
whether
within
or
a
not they'd
package.
specified. And from the police's reaction, I would suggest that it hadn't
been
actually
released.
been released.
Yeah.
But again, that didn't seem to shake Beale at all.
He seemed pretty calm all the way through this interview, and to be fair,
Yeah.
he didn't seem to get himself into any sort of panic or anything, did
He was kind of leant back in his chair, very relaxed, again, answering questions in a lot of depth. So they asked him whether or not that he'd known that Ildiko had been away, and he said, yes, they'd got a shared calendar. But again, didn't just say, yes, we've got a shared calendar. Said, yes, when we first got together, we got this shared calendar and blah, blah, blah. And he just went into such detail.
And he went
everything.
into a story about it, didn't he? Saying that we had this shared calendar and, you know, that's the only reason that I would ever look into
where she was.
At where she, to see where she was or something like that. But then he was like, oh, and then she did change the password at some point. So then I couldn't see the shared calendar anymore. And you think, well, obviously, if she changed the password, she didn't want you to.
Yes. So
see.
Just to make it clear, Beale had stated that they had been in a relationship, but then he did follow up by saying that for a few months now, they actually hadn't been dating, but they were still good friends and obviously shared the business together. So that then leads you to think, well, has it actually been a worse breakup than he's making out? He was making out that it was all very civil and that he knew that they were dating other people.
But
now,
this is
they were all
the thing,
okay
though.
With it.
He's telling the police that it's all civil and it's all fine, but the police are going to at some point look through the phones, look through computers and stuff like that, which they did. So they looked at Beale's cell site data, phone records, while he's home and his car research. So there's DNA, there's DNA swabs, there's fingerprints, they did explosive swabs on the car. But it actually sort of proved him wrong that he was sort of lying again, because from the messages between the two, it looked like the relationship had started to sort of go south by at least February. So that's a few months
prior,
isn't it?
Yeah.
So were they on good terms still? And I just don't know why he would say that when the police are going to go through his phone.
Very clearly check, But then is that just arrogance and confidence?
Yeah, but it's such an easy thing to check, isn't it?
Convince them.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to point out, we try and be as specific as possible in these episodes. At some stage, in the early stage of this investigation, Beale was arrested, and at that point, that's when they were searching the car, etc., for chemicals. But he was then released. I believe that he was arrested on other charges which aren't quite clear, but as I say, was then later released.
So do you think they were able to get the search warrant and stuff to search the house based on these other charges?
Yeah.
And then while they were going through the searches of the car and the house, I mean, different things came to light, didn't they? So there was constant texts and calls that were found from Beale to Ildiko, along with voice recordings. And I listened to some of these voice recordings, and I found them very uncomfortable.
That was an audible noise I just made. They were, It was clear that there was some distance now between Ildiko and Beale, and Ildiko was distancing herself, it seemed. Beale was professing his love to her and stating that he'd do anything to her.
Over the top.
But the messages were really intense, and again, to the outsider, you would say it was this classic
like love bombing
and just
obsessive. Yeah.
Messages included, I love you and I miss you. If we could never make love again, I would still want you completely as my life partner. Now, slightly off topic here, but that one really annoyed me, because if you are expecting to be with someone for the rest of your life, like they'd obviously talked about being together. When you're in a relationship, obviously you talk about long term. I would think, well, yeah, too right.
Yeah.
I hope you're not just with me for that side of the relationship. And equally,
if we're going to be a long term,
and equally that should go without saying, into my mind.
Yeah.
So I didn't like that one, but that was one of them. There were also poems. So one of them was, you, Ildiko, you, naught else exists but you. My dreams of you, my hopes of you, my wake, my sleeping, my plans of life, all that I am depends on you. Now, again, you often find in controlling and coercive relationships, and again, we're speaking generally here, that people or the kind of offenders in these cases place a lot of emphasis on their being as being entirely the other person's responsibility.
Yeah.
This is when you often see people threatening suicide, threatening harm to themselves if the other person leaves. And it did appear that he was making almost veiled threats, that, again, he'd said there'd be no point anymore without her.
Yeah.
And she had confided in friends that she was beginning to feel trapped in the relationship.
It's almost like guilt tripping her, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
He'd said that she'd said it would be difficult to leave because she'd already noticed that he'd ramped up communications because he felt her distance. He had actually began stalking her, and he knew where she worked because they shared the premises, but would show up when she'd asked him specifically in text not to.
I saw some of the messages, and he was saying, right, I'm showing up, I just need to talk to you, I just need to see you, again, very based on him. And she was very blunt, saying, please don't. And he was like, well, I'm going to be there, please talk to me. And
in one he said, I have no other choice.
That, I think that's scary.
Yes.
I think that's
incredibly.
Some of these are almost like a bit threats,
yeah,
aren't
they are, yeah,
Like,
threats.
I don't know what the word is to describe
Especially
it.
when you can't get away because you are tied into a contract. He knows where she works. He knows where she lives.
Yeah.
You've not got any level of distancing yourself at that stage.
So although the police have got all this now, they've still not got a forensic link to link Beale to the scene.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. Even though we can see now this evidence building up and we're thinking, well, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. We
proof.
need that forensic evidence.
Yeah. And thankfully, there was a breakthrough. So the FBI have plastics and metals specialists. We're always talking about how many different specialists there are within forensics. And they had found some yellow wire in the scene, which was embedded in the floorboards. And that was believed to have been in direct contact with the device. Experts had said that it was quite unique copper wiring, but there was also the kind of sheath of a battery. So it was a 9-volt battery, which
It's like the casing, wasn't it, from it?
Yeah, would have been close to the device. And it had almost peeled back as like one flat piece.
Yeah.
So it was quite a nice piece, I would imagine, to examine. And it was relatively intact. It became clear it was from a CVS store. And they found cell codes, which are unique to each battery, on there, which helped identify the factory and store that the batteries would have gone to.
I thought this was really clever because they could even work out that the battery was on a shipment of however many batteries that had arrived in LA. And they knew when it had arrived in LA, which was a few months before the bombing.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, wow, like, just from having this little sort of reference
with
number.
one
It's like serial number on a battery. I didn't even know batteries had serial numbers.
You also think that must be such a like ding ding ding.
Yeah.
From the lab perspective, you can imagine them like in a frenzy to ring the
to say we've found something. Yeah.
But that still only narrows it to one of 1,200 CVS stores that they've got to rule more out.
Yeah, and imagine how quick the team have got to work as well at this point to get that forensic link.
They are now trying to link Beale directly to this crime. And as we said, they're going through lots of different types of digital analysis. But they found banking receipts, so financial forensics, showed that Beale's dates with Ildiko were persistent and dedicated. They found that he was one for grand gestures, which again kind of aligns with this like love bombing style of relationship. And he'd actually recently drafted, so it hadn't all gone through, but he drafted an updated will for himself that changed Ildiko to his sole beneficiary.
And he had children.
Yeah.
He had children, so he's changed it from his children to Ildiko. And I think, again, that is another sort of a power move for him.
Yeah.
Trying to think, well, I would do all this for her. Now she's got to stay with me. Now she's got to be with me. And he'd even logged, like, all the dates that they ever went on. He'd logged the dates, the length of time they'd spent together on the dates, which I think is very odd. So you've got where they went, like what they did, how long they spent together and what date it was on.
Do you know what's just endlessly fascinating? And my mind has been overthinking a lot recently, so I'm going down a slight tangent here. But what is romantic and what's too far? And then what is someone's personality and what is way too far?
Overboard.
Because there are certain people that are quite habitual, let's say. I know there's a guy in the UK at the minute that's taken it upon himself to go to every car parking space within his local supermarket. He's gridded them, numbered them, and now he's ranking them in order of his favourite parking space. But that's just a hobby, right? He's just that kind of guy, and he likes that kind of thing. So you think, is this just his kind of personality?
Is this what he does all the time?
Yeah, with other things as well, or is it that he is completely fixated?
Can you imagine me if someone wrote me a poem? A poem?
in an unhealthy way with Ildiko. It's so hard to ever figure out, but that's why you've got to have, again, with anything, evidence.
Yeah.
So, again, they are speaking to Beale throughout this investigation, and he did mention that he knew she was seeing other people. Not only that she was seeing other people, but he did seem to have quite a good awareness of who they might be and how
they met.
He said,
didn't he? Oh, she's met someone online, so he knew how they'd met.
Yeah.
But then he also did make out on camera that if she would have come to him and said, I want to sort of open up the relationship, that he would have been happy with that.
But
which
then,
from his messages and from everything else, it seems unlikely that he would.
And also, from what we can gather, Ildiko was trying to make it quite clear that they weren't exclusive and that she was dating other people, and for him to leave it alone. So he's saying it as if they're in a committed relationship and that they were going to open it up.
Yeah.
But actually,
They weren't even together.
So
She wasn't doing anything wrong anyway.
No. It's really difficult. Again, it's important to note at this stage that Ildiko was still married to her husband. As I say, that marriage had broken down. Now, if you research this case, you see a lot of people. I'm not gonna talk about it too much. You see a lot of people negatively talking about the case and the fact that she was a married woman.
Yeah, but they were separated.
They were separated and they'd lived together after they'd separated, like a lot of couples do now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak any more of it than that.
Not everyone can afford
say,
a divorce, can they, at the time?
But just to say there's a lot of speculation around this one. February 2019, another breakthrough comes in, and I've talked about that kind of ding-ding moment. A call comes in from the lab confirming that the chemicals that were found in Beale's garage were actually a direct match to the ones used in the explosive device.
Wow, I bet
they also were a match to chemical traces in his car.
I bet at that moment they were so happy for that breakthrough, because this now is technically the only piece of evidence they've got linking Beale to the scene, isn't it?
Yeah, big but, think back to Beale's hobby. He'd already said he was into rocketry, and you can't test rockets outside the back of your house all the time. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, the chemicals in the car weren't enough, so they still didn't have enough to charge him on that. Investigators then decided to turn to Beale to give them the breakthrough that they were looking for. Again, as we've mentioned, very relaxed, very happy to talk. And he said that it was her lack of honesty about seeing other people that he felt was deceitful. But as we've just mentioned,
he said he was happy to open it up. So
and she was making it clear. Another text he'd sent said, I guess you want this to be goodbye. I'll see you in the afterlife. Again, it's so ominous and threatening.
Yeah, but that with him in that, is he threatening to kill himself?
That's what
or
I
is he
mean,
threatening to kill the both of them?
You just don't know, do you?
No, you don't know.
As things were seemingly closing in on Beale, they'd conducted another search of his home and found something, again, potentially dangerous. They'd gone up in the attic and found a backpack. Again, very cleverly noticed that whereas everything else was dusty, this backpack wasn't at all. So they thought it'd been placed there quite recently. In there was what appeared to be potentially another explosive device. So bomb technicians went in, tested it, and they confirmed it as safe. But when Beale was then asked about the attic and whether or not they might find anything in there, he said, what attic? It's
like, as
home.
if he didn't know he had an attic in his house. Like, there's only one attic, isn't there, really?
And then when they said, what do you mean? Surely you know you've got an attic. He said, oh, yeah, well, there's another crawl space. I didn't know whether you were referring to that.
There's one in the pool room. Is that what you meant? It was almost like the officers were like, you know what we mean.
But then cleverly, they actually arrested Beale again in the interest of public safety. So they needed more forensic evidence, but they could then arrest him on that. it's just so difficult because you're still trawling through all of these. You've got all of the physical pieces of evidence from the scene. You've got all of the digital. Then you've got the financial records.
I think that when the financial records start to be analysed, this is where they make another breakthrough, which I thought was really, really good. So as they're going through Beale's financial records, on May the 8th, he went to an ATM to get cash out of this cash machine. And it turns out the cash machine where he was caught on CCTV was bang opposite a CVS.
It was one of the locals' offices, wasn't it? That was like, hang on a minute.
That's across the road. Yeah. So what they did is they went to contact the store manager from CVS and they took a photo of Beale in there.
Yeah.
And they went to look at the CCTV and they found him purchasing a 9-volt battery on CCTV.
It was
in the CVS store.
Only one that had been sold in that store, and they knew that the batteries had only come in that batch from March 2018. So at that point, they've got it. They've finally got
something. Yeah.
So without reasonable doubt is still important, but that's your first kind of thing that connects him directly to the device. So they could finally charge him then. A digital timeline was then created, and they found that 3 days after Ildiko had got back from travelling abroad, Beale had then also bought 3 cardboard boxes, which directly matched the size of the one used for the bomb. He was then matched on cell site data and CCTV going back to the salon. So I think he'd gone to the salon, then gone to CVS and bought the battery, and then again for a second time gone back to the salon, which was from the nursery CCTV.
So this was the one that just caught the road. But we said, didn't we, someone would have to drop it off in a car.
Yeah.
And that is where they caught him. So now it looks like he's responsible for placing the bomb in the shop as well.
So 4 years later, I know we've not given an awful lot of dates in this episode, but we're now talking 4 years later at Los Angeles Federal Court, Beale was finally placed on trial. The prosecution created, obviously prior to this, a replica bomb so that they could show the recording to the jury and show the scale of destruction.
So I watched the explosions and wow, I thought how much damage was done with that. And watching it in a, obviously because we didn't see the exact explosion.
Yeah.
When you watch it going off on something else, it just shows the impact, doesn't it?
They also released it in, obviously, a blank area.
Yeah.
With nothing around it. So you can quite easily imagine
what it'd be like when it's enclosed.
Around, where it actually took place. It was also revealed within court that Beale had been in a really new relationship at the time that Ildiko was killed, and something that the two of them had discussed, they'd said after Ildiko's death, the immediate life goal right now is to look at this particular set of events and joke about it because you think it's funny, because it's not. The girlfriend had actually said, you should probably do a stand-up comedy routine about this because there's a lot of potentially humorous anecdotes wrapped up in the most intense life situations. Wow. And then Beale had said an audience can relate to what you're going through if it's delivered in a humorous manner. You're going to win.
What?
You just think how calculated and callous. And even if he wasn't the offender, that's just something that you just wouldn't say. But they used that to kind of prove that he was completely heartless and calculated. So after just 2 hours...
I think that's so quick.
Really quick.
Normally a jury will deliberate for, it can be days, can't it? We're normally saying 15 hours later.
And when we're talking about quick, usually that's 8 hours and that's still a whole day of deliberation. Within 2 hours is, really speedy. But he was sentenced to life with a 30-year minimum term.
Yeah. We've just got to think about the surviving victims as well in this. Yeah. And we said it at the beginning, but how much they would have gone through. And I read something about one of the victims saying that they couldn't listen to any loud bangs, things still scared them. They'd basically got PTSD.
Yeah, and I think you don't expect it anywhere you go, do you? But you've heard of car bombs and things like that before. There's certain places where you would maybe expect it more than others.
Yeah.
But when it happens something, like that, you're already with a loved one, you don't expect it to happen
in the salon, do you?
Nowhere would be safe.
No.
So hopefully we have done today's case justice. As always, we are thinking of Ildiko's family, again, her surviving family, her son, and the 2 surviving victims. So thank you ever so much for listening. Take care. See you next week.
Bye.